Here's an old saying, do as I say, not as I do. Do you have someone in your life who operates this way?
Do as I say, not as I... My mom.
I guess my mom.
My mom says that, well, acts like that.
She'll tell me one thing, but she really means something else.
Yeah, my mom, she operates that way. Like, she smokes cigarettes, and she says, like, don't smoke cigarettes.
She does some things like parties, I guess, and she's like, do it. She's like, don't go out and party or whatever.
My mom, she did a lot of bad things in her life, and she does a lot of bad things, but she says good advice to me and my sister.
My father. I just got my permit, and he'll make a wrong turn or something like that. He goes, oh, don't do what I did. Don't go over the speed limit.
My parents, they say that they're Christians, but in the end, what they do isn't Christian.
I actually have a family member who does that a lot to me, and I feel as though if you can't practice what you preach, then why should you preach to me?
Maybe my big brother.
My older brother, you know, he tells us good things to do and how to live, but then he'll turn around and he won't practice like what he preaches.
Some teachers say not to do drugs, and I guess some teachers do drugs because people got caught.
When people, like, smoke cigarettes, like old people, and they'll be like, don't do it, but then they'll, like, pull out some cigarettes.
People often say that they don't want you to drive cars because it's bad for the environment, but they'll take a car down to go get something down that's at the bottom of the street when they could easily walk.
The political world is a very hypocritical world. All these politicians will say one thing and do another thing.
The U.S. government today, they say a lot of things that they're going to do, and I guess they don't really do them.
Everyone's sort of hypocrites.
There has been and there always will be hypocrisy.
Do as I say and not as I do.
Let's face it, we all know people who operate this way.
Whether it's our family members, teachers, friends,
or actors, politicians, and sports figures.
We all know hypocrisy when we see it, and oftentimes are eager to call people out on their insincerity.
But hypocrisy is a larger issue than just practicing what you preach.
It has the ability to turn positive messages into very negative ones while seriously damaging the trust we place in others.
Hypocrisy. That's what we'll be talking about today. Hi everyone, I'm Kristen.
And I'm Elias. And this is Realfaith TV. The teens on the street could all recognize hypocrisy in the people closest to them.
We'll talk with them a little later in the show, as well as meet our studio guests.
But first, let's meet our spotlight guest, Ajama. She'll talk to us about hypocrisy and what it is and how it affects her.
Let's hear her now.
I think hypocrisy is equivalent to lying because you are lying, you're deceiving others by making them think that you're one way and you're not. There's a difference between being a hypocrite and making a mistake. With making mistakes, you tend to catch on to what you did, and try to, fix it. But with hypocrites, they tend to do it over and over again, and they do realize what they're doing for the most part, and they continue to do what they're doing. When you realize what you've done is a kind of hypocritical, you can discern it by trying not to do it again, trying to fix the problem and maybe go to the person and tell them what you've done was hypocritical and try to fix it. I've acted like a hypocrite when I tell my sisters not to take my clothes without asking, and then I go back and I take it, and then I try to change it around to make it seem as though I wasn't in fault. But I've tried to change because I do yell at them a lot about doing things like that. And another example is recently my friends and I were in college. We made a kind of a pact to study and get straight A's. And my friend just recently told me that she failed her test. I'm like, how can you do that? Telling her it's a bad thing. When I realized that I don't study as hard too. So we're both kind of failing in the pact we made. So I've tried to kind of take my advice to start studying more.
I thought it was really interesting what Ajama said in the beginning about it's lying. You're making people believe that you're something that you're not.
We know what hypocrisy means and we talk about it all the time, but there's never really a good definition for it. And I guess lying, I don't know. It put it in perspective for me.
Yeah.
But let's meet our studio guests and see what they have to say about it.
Okay. They are Vince, Dan, Mary, Jackie, Phil, Jimmy, and Laura.
All right, guys, where do you guys see hypocrisy and how does it affect you?
I think I see hypocrisy a lot in people, especially teenagers, because it's hard to say exactly you can say this one thing, but then it's hard to do exactly as you say.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely see it in a lot of the people I meet, like a lot of leaders that I know. And I guess it's because like sometimes it's just harder to practice what you preach than actually say something.
I see it like all over in the world, everywhere, like in your families and celebrities.
I think we're talking about do as I say, not as I do. Another thing that goes along with that saying is it's easier said than done. So, you know, it's really hard to do the right thing, and everybody, you know, says something and sometimes does another thing. It's just, I think, human nature.
And I had a teacher like that. She told us never to curse. It was such a horrible habit to get into. But every time her pen dropped or her desk was out of order, she'd go dropping some word that you shouldn't say on TV.
I think we find it in common day society, whether in our families and political leaders, as Jimmy said, or celebrities in everyday life.
I think it's sad, but it's just so common.
Yeah.
I think it's most unfortunate when you find it in role models.
Yeah. And it's funny because most of the times when you do find it, it's in a role model because that's when it burns the most. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. The word hypocrisy comes from the Greek hypocrisis, which translated means play acting.
Stage actors of the classical period were called hypocrites and were not looked on favorably by society.
When they entered public life, they were often accused of impersonating characters with contrary positions and were deemed untrustworthy.
That is why the words hypocrisy and hypocrites carry such negative connotations.
When we think of a hypocrite, we see a person pretending to be something he or she is not.
Though they might not acknowledge their double standards or even realize what they're doing,
it can seriously diminish the trust we place in them.
During high school, our spotlight guest Ijama became close with a fellow classmate she would later discover to be hypocritical of many things, including their friendship.
Next, she talks about how this lack of trust affected her and her group of friends, to the point where the friendship was broken altogether.
In high school, I used to have a friend, thinking back on it, who was a hypocrite. She'd, in a way, con us out of helping her, maybe con us out of giving her money or doing certain deeds for her, but when it was our turn to ask for a small favor, she'd have excuses to not help us out, and this went on all 4 years of high school. After a while, it was kind of hard to hang around her because almost everything that she did was hypocritical, and it kind of repels the friendship and makes you don't want to hang around the person anymore. Like, she put on the facade that she was a good friend and she tricked us into everything, and then after 4 years of high school, we looked back and realized everything about her was a mask. She wasn't really who she was. It's kind of sad because she was a good friend, and maybe like she looks back on it, she realized what she did was bad, and maybe she can try to change it and maybe get her friends back, because, you know, losing friends is not a good thing, not an easy thing to do or go through.
It's kind of almost like hypocrisy, and like kind of what Ijama was saying. It's like a form of betrayal almost, and it's like you know, like I said before, it burns. Well, it really does burn, especially when it's your best friend or your role model.
Yeah.
But what about you guys? Has hypocrisy ever affected like a relationship with your friends or family?
I mean, definitely. I mean, for me, there was this one girl who, you know, when I first met her and we became friends, I thought, you know, we're gonna be a really good influence on each other. Like, she seemed like a very good, like, religious person with a lot of the same morals and stuff as I was. But during class one day, like, everybody was talking about cheating, like that was the, you know, that was the moral topic for religion class. And like, she was saying, you know, how bad cheating is and everything, and then later she had like a cheat sheet, and she was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna cheat on this math test, I'm just gonna like do well. And it really hit me, and after that, like, I kind of almost distanced myself from them because, you know, I didn't want to be a part of that.
My best friend, he is my best friend, and I love him to death, but he always tells me to talk to my parents and have problems. But then, you know, we were talking, and he really doesn't talk to his parents when he has problems. He'd rather, you know, talk to me. So I was like, well, that's really hypocritical of him.
You kind of have to look at the whole spectrum before you call somebody a hypocrite, you know what I'm saying?
I mean, while it may seem easy to see the hypocrisy in others and point the finger at them,
Do we ever stop to think that some of our actions and behaviors could be seen as hypocritical to what we profess to believe?
do you ever find yourself caught up in hypocrisy?
That's what we ask the teens on the street.
Let's check it out.
Do you ever find yourself caught in hypocrisy?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, a lot. Yes.
No, I try not to be hypocritical.
Oh yeah, all the time. Everyone has been hypocritical.
Once or twice. Like, to little kids, I'll tell them not to do something, but then I'll go and do it.
Once, yeah, I seemed pretty hypocritical, and then I fixed my mistake.
I assume I have been caught being hypocritical. but I really don't remember.
I'm sure, yeah. I've said I wouldn't do things and then gone out and done it.
Probably, like, because I have a little brother, so like if I tell him not to do something in school and I do the same thing, like I kind of feel bad about it.
Some things I say I don't believe in, but I go back and I do it when no one's around me.
I tell people to stop being vain or greedy, but I mean, I look at myself in the mirror like 50 times a day.
I guess I'd say I do things, and I guess I never get around to them.
Like if I tell my sister to do something and not to do something and then I turn around and do it, you know? I'll tell like my little cousin not to curse or something, and then like when I'm mad, I'll curse.
In school, sometimes I'll tell my friends not to do certain things, possibly cheating on a test. You're not supposed to, but I do it anyway.
Maybe a couple times I've been hypocritical with what I tell my little siblings and my younger siblings about, you know, life decisions and stuff. And I feel as though sometimes I shouldn't say what I say, because if I don't practice it, then why should I tell them?
So what about you guys? Was there a time when you found yourself guilty of hypocrisy?
I think I found myself guilty, as you said, when I try and help younger people than I like. I'm not a mentor, but I'm sort of an older sister figure to a freshman in my school. And when she has problems or when she wants to talk about things that she hasn't really told anybody because she trusts me, I always try and give her the best type of advice and try and tell her to find the answer within herself. But when I find myself going through similar problems in my family life, I find that I don't really follow my own advice and I keep it to myself rather.
I find that I'm a hypocrite with my little brother because like you want your little brother to be good and grow up to do everything right, but then like you tell him to do all those things and then I find like it hard to do and be good myself sometimes.
I'm always a person that would always go out to help somebody if they need it. But sometimes if I need help myself and people offer it, I kind of reject it. Kind of a message I'm sending off that's not good.
Well, has anyone ever called you out on your hypocrisies?
My mom tends to call me out on hypocrisy a lot, and I tend to do it back to her though too.
My little sister, well, she's not that little, she's 15, but she kind of got this habit of cursing a lot. And I didn't realize how much she did it and how much I did it till I realized, Vanessa, stop cursing, don't do that. And then I was like, ooh, I do it too. So I kind of take it upon myself that, when I want to curse, I'm like, no, don't say it, because then you're going to tell her something and then she's going to be like, haha, you do it so I can do it too.
Yeah, with me, a few years ago, I kind of went through depression, but during that time, I'd still go out of my way to help people. But one day, someone looked at me and they were like, well, why aren't you trying to get help for yourself? And I kind of got stopped there because I was like, wait, why am I not getting help? And it was part me thinking I could handle it on my own, and part of me just not wanting to seek it.
Mm-hmm. I can definitely think that in one of the friendships I've had for a while, it was a 6-year friendship, I wasn't doing what I was telling my friend to do. And I felt bad, and after a while, he did call me out on it, and I thought to myself that, that's not how I should treat my friends. If I respect my friends, the advice I'd give them should be something that I honestly believe and would follow through on myself, unless the situation wouldn't present itself for me in that same way. Yeah. And I think it's exactly what Mary said, it's easier said than done.
Mm-hmm. Well, with my mom, she always does things and they start to bother me. And I eventually express how it bothers me. And then she points out to me that I actually do the same thing she does. She's like, you're just like me. And I'm like, yeah. I didn't even realize I was doing the things that were bothering her that bother me too. And it's weird because it's she doesn't tell me, but she shows me, which I kind of like that she doesn't make me feel bad about it.
I've heard there's a saying that says the stuff that you don't like in other people and you're pointing out is the stuff that you actually have wrong with yourself.
Right. And it sounds like almost everybody here has, experiences being hypocrites and being called out hypocrites, but it's not like we're the first generation in the history of the world to deal with hypocrisy, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. In the Gospel of Matthew, we hear Jesus speaking with deep passion about hypocrisy.
In chapter 23, verse 25, he says, "Woe to you, you hypocrites! You cleanse the outside of cup and dish, but inside they are full of plunder and self-indulgence."
Blind Pharisee, cleanse first the inside of the cup, so that the outside also may be clean.
He is quite pointedly speaking to the disparity of ritual purity and true moral purity.
Many of the people who Jesus was addressing were sticklers for the law, but were blind to the needs of the less fortunate and sometimes brutally unmerciful.
While the days of the Pharisees may long since be past, the hypocrisy that existed then is still very much with us today.
Even in a democratic country where the rule of law attempts to protect everyone equally, hypocrisy can still take a hold of our attitudes and our policies.
Let's go back to our spotlight guest, Ajama, where she discusses how hypocrisy stands in the way of many of the issues that we face as a nation.
Well, I know hypocrisy in our nation here. The Constitution states that we're all equal, we all have equal rights. We should be able to live in this country happily, but then again, you have all these hate crimes and all these, racism and things like that. So for us to say that each one of us, or just a nation as a whole, is a hypocritical nation is wrong, because as a whole we have problems and we have to fix our problems before we can say that we can help someone else's problems or say that we don't have any problems at all. A big issue now today is immigration. I've heard that they don't want people immigrating from Mexico and South America to America because they're stealing our work and money, when a lot of people in this country, native in this country, have started from the bottom and they've worked hard to where they are at. And unfortunately, those from over the border have had it hard, and their way of trying to get to the top is to come over here and work for as little as the minimum wages, and for us as a nation to attack them for trying to help themselves out and their families is hypocritical.
I think everyone at times can be hypocritical, whether they mean to be or not. And I think to realize that you could possibly be a hypocrite is looking within for the answer, realizing I tell this person to do this, do I do the same thing? And it can be difficult, and we will slip up at times.
I think it's difficult, though, to be introspective when you have a large group of people, such as a government or maybe a business or a body that's more than one person, because it requires time and it requires honesty. And I think that, especially when there's a power struggle involved or a person of power who you respect or you maybe even fear, it's difficult to confront that because there could be some kind of repercussion. So it's just a matter of being wise as to when to address people's hypocrisy. Mm-hmm.
I kind of agree with that, because, in like today's society, and maybe even before that, like, honesty is like a really hard thing to come, because we all want things that we really want, and we really don't think about other people. So in order to address hypocrisy, there would have to be a huge change in society, as a government, as a country, or even as a world.
I think society sets us up. It's like, say that it's easier to say something than it is to do it. And I think our society is like, we're kind of lazy. So it makes it easier for us to just say something, not actually get up and do it.
Laziness.
Hypocrisy is a very difficult thing to confront, especially when we or someone we love falls victim to it.
Sometimes we can be really outraged when we see it played out in the public forum.
All too often, though, it seems that we're kind of at a loss as to what to do. Mm-hmm. So at that point, we can just begin by starting to address the hypocrisies that are within us.
Honest discernment of our own actions versus what we say we're all about.
Do we say we want to see justice for the poor and then fail to act on the many opportunities we have to do our part to end poverty?
Do we hate the idea of someone talking about us behind our backs, yet jump in to put someone down when the conversation turns on them?
When we observe someone being hypocritical, do we suddenly find ourselves unwilling to help them point out their hypocrisies and leave it behind them?
Next, we ask the teens on the street if faith teaches them anything about hypocrisy.
Let's hear what they had to say.
Do you think faith teaches anything about hypocrisy?
If you have faith, you probably would be less of a hypocrite.
Act the way you talk.
It says, in the end of the day, you really need to be a good person and do what you say you're going to do.
It doesn't let room for someone to be hypocritical, because if you practice your faith really well, then you shouldn't be a hypocrite in your life.
That we should try not to do that and not judge others for doing something if we do it too.
Hypocrisy is one of the worst things you can do, because you're saying it's lying. Faith teaches not to do it, and how to live, and how being that judgmental and being like that isn't a very good way to live.
So if you're telling people to believe in certain things, or like trying to help them understand in like the same faith as you do, you'd have to practice it as well to show them that I'm not just telling you this and like lying to you.
All right, so what about you guys? How does faith help you to deal with hypocrisy?
And what can we learn from Jesus' response to the hypocrites of his day?
we could think like, what would Jesus want us to do? And would he like it if we become hypocritical? As far as learning from what Jesus did with the hypocrites in that day, he used his courage to challenge those Pharisees and see if they could change their lives. We could use courage to stand up for what we believe in.
It reminds me of a phrase by Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world. And when you want to change society and when you want to make a monumental change such as hypocrisy and bringing an end to it, it's going to be hard. We're going to face struggles, we're going to fall, we're going to be hypocrites in ourselves. But I think when we use our faith, it gives us not only strength, but courage, like Jimmy said, to be the change we want to be, not only with ourselves, but bring about change in the world.
I also agree. I think that when I think about faith and hypocrisy, I think of preferential option for the poor. When you go to make a decision and you keep the poor and the unfortunate in the back of your mind as you're doing something, it sways the decisions you make. And the thing is, the little decisions that you make can help you as you go to talk about things or rally for things or be that change in the world. At least you're doing the little things as well as the big things to make your point known.
Well, next, Ajama addresses how hypocrisy goes against what we believe as Christians.
And describes how Jesus challenged hypocrites in order to shed light on the truth.
Hypocrisy does go against the basic rules of being a Christian because we are taught to first not to judge others, and we are taught to be truthful in who we are, because hypocrisy is another form of lying and deceitfulness. So it does go against our Christian belief. Jesus, he spoke about hypocrisy. Jesus said that before you can remove the splinter from your brother's eye, remove the beam from your eye. What he's saying is, before you move pick out the small mistakes from others, look at the mistakes in yourself, because everyone has mistakes, and they're probably even maybe worse than the others. Before you can correct someone else's mistakes or point their mistakes out, find your mistakes and fix your mistakes first. And also, Jesus met upon the adulteress when everyone's going to stone her, and he stopped them right before, and he asked them, whoever hasn't committed a sin, be the first one to throw the stone. And no one threw the stone because everyone has committed a sin before. In the Bible, Jesus mentions the Pharisees and scribes, how they would profess the word of God, but then they wouldn't live it in their everyday lives. And that relates to even today, how some people, they go to church and they practice Christianity in church, but then outside church, everything turns around and they don't live it. And as Christians, if we act in what we believe, both inside and outside of church, others can pick up on it, and maybe hypocrisy can be reduced in our world today. I believe that prayer and talking to God can help us be less judgmental and hypocritical towards others, because God is always there for us, and asking for his guidance can help us reduce hypocrisy in ourselves.
I think that we can take Jesus as an example of how we can better live our lives and try to help others do so, and but try to preach almost what Jesus is saying. And when we make a mistake, maybe we are committing hypocrisy, but then we learn from our mistakes, and by admitting we made a mistake, we're furthering ourselves from the act of hypocrisy.
Yeah, I think we're always trying to get closer to God. So, we sometimes may be judgmental, but we also have to remember that we believe in a loving and forgiving God. So if we ask for forgiveness when we do find ourselves, being hypocrites, he will forgive us. And it's human nature, and you just have to learn and pray and ask God for forgiveness when you do.
I like what Ajama said. She said, before you can help other people, you have to fix the problems within yourself. And also that the main thing we can do is just pray to God for help.
Yeah, and with others, rather than simply calling them out on their hypocrisy, really just help them. Like, help correct them, help them learn. And if you are a hypocrite at times, acknowledge that, admit that, be like, yo, I made a mistake and I'm willing to fix that. I'm willing to turn away from my hypocrisy. And others will see that and they'll want to change themselves as well.
No one wants to be a hypocrite, but yet somehow we all can be guilty of it.
Perhaps the best way we can begin to deal with the problems of hypocrisy is to start within ourselves.
A nightly examination of the day that is ending will be a good habit to form.
Begin with a prayer to God, asking Him to illuminate your thoughts and actions during the day.
Then as you're getting ready for bed, ask God again to help you examine the interactions with people during the day and how you may manage a better day tomorrow.
How does your faith help you to overcome hypocrisy?
We'd love to hear from you. Contact us through our website.
The address is www.realfaithtv.com.
Or you can call us at 609-406-7402.
And we'll leave you today with this passage from the book of James, chapter 3.
For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there is disorder in every foul practice.
But the wisdom from above is first of all pure, then peaceable, gentle, compliant, full of mercy and good fruits, without inconstancy or insincerity.
And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace for those who cultivate peace.
Well, thanks for watching.
We'll see you next time on
Real Faith TV. God bless.